Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive. Today we're going to crack open a biology textbook and revisit a topic that might just make you see your own body in a whole new light.
Yeah, it's funny how we often take the simplest things for granted.
Right, like breathing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, breathing. We do it all day, every day, without even thinking about it.
So for this deep dive, we're going to zoom in on the respiratory system.
Get up close and personal with those lungs of yours.
I'm really excited to untangle this whole process, from that first breath to, well, what exactly happens to the air we breathe in?
Well, let's break it down. First things first, why is breathing such a big deal anyway?
Yeah, we know we need to breathe, but why? What's the underlying, biological imperative?
It's all about energy. Think of your body like a super efficient machine constantly whirring and working.
Okay, I like that analogy.
To keep all those parts running smoothly, it needs fuel. And that fuel, my friend, is oxygen.
Ah, so breathing is how we get that precious oxygen on board.
Precisely. Every single cell in your body, from your head to your toes, needs a steady supply of oxygen to do its job.
So it's not just about our lungs. It's like oxygen is the power source for the whole system.
You got it. You eat to provide your body with nutrients, right? But those nutrients are useless without oxygen.
Interesting.
It's like having a car with a full tank of gas but no spark plugs. It's going nowhere.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. So we've got the oxygen coming in, but we also breathe out carbon dioxide, right?
Right. That's the other side of the coin.
So what's the deal with that? Why do we need to get rid of carbon dioxide?
Well, when your cells use oxygen to create energy, carbon dioxide is kind of like the exhaust fumes.
Ah, a byproduct of the energy-making process.
Exactly. And if it builds up in your system, it can actually be harmful. Breathing out is like our exhaust pipe, ensuring that carbon dioxide is removed and everything stays in balance.
Okay, that makes sense. So we breathe in oxygen to fuel our cells and breathe out carbon dioxide to get rid of waste.
It's a pretty amazing system when you think about it.
It is. Okay, so we've got the why of breathing down. But what about the how? How does air actually travel from the outside world into those tiny cells throughout our body?
It's like a carefully choreographed journey.
With multiple checkpoints along the way.
Exactly. Think of it like a relay race where each stage has a specific role to play.
Okay, I'm ready for this relay race. Where do we start?
We start with, well, breathing, inhaling and exhaling.
Simple as that.
We take in oxygen-rich air and expel carbon dioxide-rich air.
Okay, first step done.
Hmm.
And then that inhaled oxygen makes its way into our bloodstream somehow. How does that happen?
That's the second leg of our relay race, called external respiration. It all goes down in your lungs.
The lungs.
The oxygen from the air you breathed in crosses over into tiny blood vessels surrounding your lungs.
Like it just seeps through.
It's a process called diffusion. At the same time, carbon dioxide from your blood moves into your lungs to be exhaled.
So it's like a swap meet happening at a microscopic level.
A very delicate and precise swap meet.
Yeah.
But the journey doesn't end there.
Oh, there's more.
Oh, yeah. Once that oxygen is in your bloodstream, it hitches a ride on red blood cells and travels throughout your body,
Like a delivery service.
delivering that precious cargo to every single cell. We call this internal respiration the third stage of our relay.
So the lungs are just the starting point, then it's a whole body distribution network.
Precisely. And finally, we reach the grand finale, cellular respiration. This is where the magic truly happens.
Okay, lay it on me. What's going on in those cells?
Inside each cell, oxygen is used to break down nutrients from the food you eat, releasing energy to power all your bodily functions.
So that's how we get energy from food. It needs oxygen to unlock it.
Exactly. And guess what's produced as a byproduct?
Let me guess. Carbon dioxide.
Bingo. Which then gets carried back to the lungs to be exhaled, completing the cycle.
Wow, that's incredible. We've covered the entire relay race from start to finish.
And every stage is absolutely crucial for keeping you alive and functioning. It's a beautiful symphony of biological processes, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so we've talked about why we breathe and we've outlined the four main stages. But can we zoom in on that journey of air? From the moment we take a breath, where does it actually go?
Well, it all starts with that simple breath in through the nose, right?
Right, so the nose.
Yeah.
What's so special about it?
Those nasal passages are more than just a pathway for air. They're like your personal air conditioning system for your lungs.
Oh, that's interesting.
They have these scroll-like structures called turbinates that increase the surface area.
More surface area. Why is that important?
Well, these turbinates are covered in a moist lining and have lots of blood vessels. As air passes over them, it gets warmed and moistened.
So it's like a built-in humidifier for our lungs.
Exactly. And that warm, moist air is much gentler on your delicate lung tissues.
Makes sense. Okay, so the air is warmed and moistened. Then what?
Then it continues down through the pharynx, which is basically the back of your throat.
Wait, isn't that where food goes too? Wouldn't that cause problems?
That's where a very important little flap called the epiglottis comes into play.
The epiglottis
Yeah.
vaguely rings a bell from biology class.
It acts like a traffic cop, directing air and food down the right paths. When you breathe, the epiglottis stays open, letting air flow into the trachea, or windpipe, as it's commonly known.
Okay, so air goes down the trachea.
But when you swallow, the epiglottis flips down, covering the trachea and guiding the food down the esophagus to your stomach.
Ah, so that's how we avoid choking. That little flap is a lifesaver.
It's a crucial piece of the puzzle. Now let's talk about the trachea itself.
The windpipe, what's special about that?
It's a sturdy tube made of C-shaped rings of cartilage.
C-shaped. Why not a full circle?
Those C-shaped rings provide support, keeping the trachea open for airflow, but they're also flexible.
So it can move and bend as we breathe and move our necks?
Exactly. And the open part of the C faces the esophagus, which allows it to expand a bit when you swallow food.
That's clever. Strong enough to stay open, but flexible enough to accommodate swallowing. What happens to the air once it reaches the end of the trachea?
It reaches a fork in the road. The trachea branches into two smaller tubes called bronchi, one leading to each lung.
Like a tree trunk splitting into two main branches.
And those branches keep branching and branching, getting smaller and smaller.
Like twigs on a tree.
Exactly. Those smaller branches are called bronchioles, and they form a massive network that reaches deep into your lungs.
It's like a complex highway system for air.
A super efficient delivery system. But here's the key question. Where does the actual exchange of gases happen? Where does the oxygen get into the blood and the carbon dioxide get out?
That's the million-dollar question. Where's the real action taking place?
It all happens in these tiny air sacs called alveoli. They're clustered at the end of each bronchiole.
Alveoli. I remember seeing diagrams of those in the textbook. What are they actually like?
Imagine them as tiny balloons clustered together like grapes, and get this, their walls are only 1 cell thick.
1 cell thick? That seems incredibly fragile.
It is, but that thinness is crucial for efficient diffusion.
Diffusion.
It's the process by which molecules move from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration.
So in this case, oxygen moves from the air in the alveoli into the bloodstream, where there's less oxygen.
Exactly. And carbon dioxide moves in the opposite direction.
It's like they're swapping places.
Now get this, each alveolus is surrounded by a network of tiny blood vessels called capillaries.
Capillaries.
Right.
Aren't those the smallest blood vessels in our body?
The tiniest. And just like the alveoli, they have incredibly thin walls.
So you have these super thin alveoli right next to these super thin capillaries.
That's the secret sauce. This close proximity allows for the rapid and efficient exchange of gases.
So the alveoli are where the real magic happens. It's amazing how something so tiny can be so crucial.
It is, and here's a mind-blowing fact. If you were to spread out the surface area of all the alveoli in your lungs, it would cover an area roughly the size of a tennis court.
Wait, a tennis court? That's insane. But I guess it makes sense, considering how much gas exchange needs to happen.
It's a testament to the incredible design of your lungs.
It's amazing. And to think, we've only just begun to explore this fascinating system.
There's so much more to discover.
Okay, so we've mapped out that whole journey of air, from the nose to those incredible alveoli deep in our lungs.
And we've seen how those tiny air sacs play a key role in exchanging oxygen and carbon dioxide.
But here's something I've always wondered about. You know, mammals live practically everywhere, from deserts to the Arctic.
Right. All sorts of extreme environments.
So how do our respiratory systems cope with such different conditions? Like, how do we not, dry out when we're breathing all the time?
That's a great point. It all comes down to adaptation. Preventing water loss is a big challenge for us land mammals.
Yeah, I never really thought about that.
Think about it, those nasal passages we talked about. They warm and moisten the air we breathe in, right?
Yeah, like a built-in humidifier.
But that moisture comes from us. If we lost all that water vapor with every exhale, we'd dehydrate really quickly.
So there must be some clever mechanisms in place to minimize that water loss.
Exactly. Our respiratory system is designed with water conservation in mind. First of all, Our lungs are tucked away deep inside the chest cavity.
So they're not directly exposed to the outside air all the time.
Right. And the whole respiratory tract from your nose all the way down to the alveoli is lined with moist surfaces.
To trap that water vapor.
Precisely. As we exhale, that moisture doesn't just escape into the atmosphere. A lot of it gets recaptured by those moist linings.
So it's kind of like a closed-loop system designed to recycle that precious water.
Pretty neat, huh?
It is. It's amazing how our bodies have evolved to deal with these challenges.
Now, remember how we mentioned that lungs are kind of like inside-out gills?
Yeah, that was fascinating. I've always been curious about the evolution of breathing, like how we went from water to land.
Well, both gills and lungs have the same basic function to exchange gases.
To get oxygen in and carbon dioxide out?
Exactly. But they achieve this in different ways. Fish gills have those delicate filaments that extend outward into the water.
So they have a lot of surface area in contact with the water, where the oxygen is.
Right. Our lungs, on the other hand, have those millions of tiny alveoli packed inside.
Creating a huge internal surface area.
Exactly. So both systems maximize surface area for efficient gas exchange, but they've evolved completely different structures to do it.
So it's like they both solve the same problem, but they come up with different solutions.
It's a beautiful example of convergent evolution, different organisms facing similar challenges and coming up with ingenious solutions.
That's so cool. Okay, so we've talked about adaptation, evolution. Are you ready to hit me with some more fun facts about lungs?
Always ready for some fun facts. Did you know that you produce almost a liter of mucus every day?
A liter? Seriously? That sounds kind of gross.
It might seem like a lot, but trust me, it's essential for keeping your respiratory system healthy.
Okay, so what's so great about mucus?
Mucus is sticky, and that stickiness is its superpower. It traps all sorts of stuff: dust, bacteria, pollen, anything that could irritate your lungs.
So it's like a protective barrier.
Exactly. And remember those cilia we talked about, those tiny hair-like structures?
Yeah, they line the airways, right?
They're constantly working, moving that mucus upward, away from your lungs and towards your throat.
So that's why we cough or sneeze sometimes. It's our body's way of getting rid of that gunk.
That's right. Coughing and sneezing are protective reflexes. It might be tempting to suppress them, but it's usually best to just let your body do its thing.
So let it all out. Good to know. Okay, so we've talked about natural lungs, but what about artificial ones? I mean, we have artificial hearts, so why not artificial lungs?
That's a fascinating question, and it's something scientists are definitely working on.
Really? Are they close to making it happen?
It's a tough challenge, to be honest. The lung is an incredibly complex organ.
I can imagine. All those alveoli, those capillaries. That's a lot to replicate.
Exactly. An artificial lung needs to be biocompatible so it doesn't trigger an immune response from the body.
That makes sense.
And it needs to be durable enough to handle constant use, but also flexible enough to move with the body.
Plus, it has to be able to exchange gases efficiently, just like a real lung.
It's a tall order. But researchers are exploring some promising approaches. There are implantable devices being developed and external systems that can support lung function temporarily.
So it's still early days, but there's hope for the future.
Absolutely. It's a rapidly evolving field with the potential to revolutionize treatment for lung diseases.
This is all so fascinating. We've covered so much ground today, from basic breathing mechanics to evolution and even artificial lungs. What else can our lungs do that we haven't talked about yet? It's really amazing when you think about it, just how much is going on every time we take a breath.
Right. This whole intricate system working tirelessly behind the scenes.
And it makes you realize, with all those delicate alveoli and capillaries, just how vulnerable our lungs really are.
They are. Those alveoli, especially with their incredibly thin walls, they need to be protected.
Absolutely. So knowing what we know now about all the ins and outs of the respiratory system, how do things like air pollution or smoking actually affect our lungs?
Well, think of it this way. Your lungs are constantly working, filtering air, exchanging gases, keeping your body in balance.
Right?
But when you breathe in polluted air or smoke, you're introducing harmful substances into this finely tuned system.
So what happens to those harmful substances? Where do they go?
They can irritate and inflame the lining of your airways, making it harder to breathe. And over time, they can actually damage the delicate tissues of your lungs.
Leading to what kind of problems?
Well, for one thing, they can make you more susceptible to infections, like bronchitis or pneumonia.
Oh, so it weakens your immune system.
Exactly. Your lungs are already working overtime trying to deal with those harmful substances, leaving them less equipped to fight off germs and viruses.
That makes sense. So basically, you're more likely to get sick if you're breathing in polluted air or smoke.
Right. And long-term exposure can increase your risk of developing more serious conditions like COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease.
COPD, I've heard of that. It's pretty serious, isn't it?
It is. It makes it difficult to breathe, and it can have a major impact on your quality of life.
That's scary. I knew smoking was bad, but I never realized how damaging air pollution could be as well.
It's definitely a serious issue and something we should all be aware of.
So, what can we do to protect our lungs? I mean, aside from the obvious, like not smoking.
Well, being mindful of air quality is important. Checking air quality reports, especially if you live in an area with high pollution levels.
Yeah, that makes sense. And what about things like wearing masks? Do those actually help?
Masks can definitely make a difference, especially those designed to filter out fine particles. They can help reduce your exposure to pollutants and irritants.
Good to know. But even if you've already been exposed to air pollution or smoke, is there any hope for your lungs? Can they recover?
That's the good news. Your lungs are remarkably resilient.
Really? So it's not necessarily too late to make a difference.
Not at all. If you stop smoking and reduce your exposure to pollutants, your lungs can actually begin to repair themselves.
So our bodies have an amazing ability to heal, even after being damaged.
It's truly incredible. By making healthier choices, you're giving your lungs the best chance to recover and function at their best.
That's reassuring to hear. It's like a reminder that we have some control over our own health, even when it comes to things like air pollution.
Exactly. Every breath you take is precious, and it's up to us to protect the amazing system that makes it all possible.
Well said. I think we've covered a lot of ground today. We've explored the intricate world of the respiratory system, learned about the importance of protecting our lungs, and even discovered the potential for healing.
It's been quite a journey, and I hope you've come away with a newfound appreciation for the incredible work your lungs do every single day, every single minute, even as we speak.
I definitely have. This deep dive has been eye-opening, to say the least.
So next time you take a breath, remember all the amazing things happening inside you. And let's all do our part to keep those lungs healthy and happy.
Couldn't agree more. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the respiratory system. We'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration of the human body.